Hi, and welcome back to Adobe Live. My name is Anika, and I'm excited to dive into all things DIY saddle stitch booklet in Adobe Express. I'm a brand strategist and designer based out of Toronto, Canada, and I'm excited to dive into everything there is to make this zine come to life. I'll be creating a zine for my new podcast, the Able Heads Podcast, where we dive into creative minds to understand how they get things done and they solve problems differently and on their own terms. If you wanted to listen to the podcast, it's available everywhere you get your podcast. But without further ado, let's dive into what is a saddle stitch booklet. Well, a saddle stitch booklet is the most cost effective way to create something at home and a binding method that gives you that professional look and feel. The one thing to note about saddle stitch booklets is that the total number of pages should be divisible by 4. So if you're creating pages, let's say 16 or 24, 24 is divisible by 4. Yes. They should be divisible by 4 so that you can arrange the printer spreads for making that saddle stitch booklet. If you were working in Adobe InDesign though, there is an option to select the saddle stitch booklet layout and Adobe InDesign would do the work for you. We don't have that in Adobe Express just yet. And if you're not a power user, and I know Adobe InDesign can be intimidating for a lot of people, but if you still wanted to make something personalized for your book club, or if you wanted to make for your yoga classes, or your findings or your reflections for the quarter, there's so many things you could use this use case for. Let's dive into how you can arrange your printer spreads before we dive into the design process. So, as we know, the total number of page count should be divisible by 4. That's what we need. So, if you are doing 16 pages in this case, the total number of spreads where one spread has 2 pages would be 8 because 16 by 2 is 8, right? That's step 1. Now, as you go through, these are 8 pages. As you go through numbering the pages, how you can lay out in that spread, the one at the top right is page 1. The way that you number now is going zigzag in this pattern and keep numbering until you arrive at the last spread. So you go from 1, 2, 3, 4, and then so on and so forth until you arrive at 8. This is our last spread. And then you go on to the same spread with number 9 and then keep repeating the same pattern until you reach your top page and work your way up. So I know that's a little bit confusing. This link is in the stream description, so you'll be able to go back and reference to it whenever you want it and whenever you're creating your own saddle stitch booklet or a mini zine, whatever you want to call it. It is a saddle stitch binding method, so let's stick with that and we can refer it to a zine as we go through. One thing that I wanted to mention before we actually dive into it is that there will be keystrokes available to see on the screen to see what shortcuts I'm pressing. There's also subtitles in the YouTube player and also speeding up and speeding down the audio. So if you wanted to do that and watch at your own pace, you can even do that and even pause the video. So let's go to Adobe Express and show you how we can achieve something like this. So this is my Adobe Express homepage. If you've never worked with Adobe Express, head on to new.express.adobe.com. This is where I'm going to be creating everything. So let's click the plus button and I'm going to do a custom size just because I am in Canada and I do want to use a letter size here. So I'm going to look over to my notes and see that the size for this is 279.4 width and we have 215.9 if I'm not wrong, and all of that is in millimeter because that's the conventions we follow. And we have page 1. The first thing that I see that's different from my spreads or the number of pages is that we only have one page. So let's fix that by duplicating this page. So click on these 3 dots and then click on duplicate. And you can do this from here as well. So I'm going to duplicate that until I achieve 8 spreads or 16 pages. So let's do that here. There we go. So now we have 8 spreads, but we don't know where page 1 or page 16 is. In this case, let's look at page spread 1, which has page 16 and page 1 here, which is the back and the front cover. So I'm going to go to elements here on the left, go to shapes and find a rectangle that I can use as a guide. Decrease the border thickness to 0 and then I can expand this until I I'm prompted that this is the center of the page, which Adobe Express does such a wonderful job at. And now we have half of the page demarcated here. So let's copy the shape. I'm going to press Command C. Actually, I'm using a shortcut. So I'm going to press Command V on every page. Super easy when you're creating something like this. I've set a keyboard shortcut, so it's just one click for me and it does the action, which is super cool. Yeah, so now we have the spreads. This is back cover and front cover, and then this is the zigzag pattern. With the new update, you can actually see all the pages over here and even see a vertical view, I believe. Yeah, there you go. Actually, let's see how we can do that. I knew that you could scroll vertically, but I'm trying to see how that works. I don't quite remember. So let's see. Interesting. Vertical scrolling was here somewhere. We'll find it. We'll find it soon enough. Let's not um, dive deep into that just yet. So I actually went ahead and set up a library that I could use for the zine. So I'm gonna use that with which has some colors, which has some QR codes and some assets. So let's start with actually creating a title for our zine. So let's go to text, add your text, and I'm gonna say between and place it here, and then it's gonna be called between the lines, and then I also want to add the name of the podcast, so I'm gonna say able heads and leave that here. I think I did use a pixelated font and it was Argent Pixel CF, and that's what I'm going to be using today. So I have this right here. And then I love that it's so wonderful that even detects where the center of half of the page is. I want to keep the sizes consistent, so I'm going to do that. And I also want to use the same font here and keep that to be perhaps we'll keep that to be 48 so it matches and it's smaller slightly. Yeah, I'm gonna center align that and we have all of this. I also want to add some other elements. So let's hop into my library again and see if I have that made. These were all of my guests for season one, is what I'm calling it. I'm not too sure if I'll be adding more people in here, but we had some guests. I still need to pitch myself to more people, so we don't have any other episodes lined up just yet, but I'm excited to dive into all of the things. I do want to add another title here saying that this is Zine 1, too many zeros. And then I also want to say that this is 2025. So, yeah, I just want to showcase how simple it is to create something like this in Adobe Express. I feel like so many people get intimidated thinking about how do I create my own booklet in Adobe Express. So, yeah, okay. I'm gonna bring this here and then I want to send it to back. So I right clicked it and now you can't see the text because yeah, it is not visible, but I do want to make it not quite black. So I'm going to select everything and then select the color and make it perhaps 222222. That's not quite black. I like that. And then maybe I want to duplicate the shape. So I'm going to press Command C and press Command V and then also send this to back right over here. Now this shape was in white, so we can't see that. So I'm going to go back to my swatches and these are my additional colors in my library, which also act as a brand within Adobe Express. So let's group these two and then maybe make this like so. I do want to decrease the size of this just ever so slightly and then something like this. Okay, it looks kind of incomplete though, and this can only mean one thing. Not really, but I did go to Unsplash and I selected my free license here and I found this really cool image, which honestly is so fun. I want to download that and then I actually want to bring it up to my assets. So I'm going to drag that in here. It looks something like this. And the first thing that I want to do is remove background. And all of this is done within Adobe Express, which I think is super cool. So while it's removing the background, now it looks like this. Now you see that it's not perfect. And I actually don't mind that because I like that kind of rugged look and feel. So I can size that down just a little bit, maybe something like this, and then maybe size that down a little like so as well. So it stays somewhere like here. And then I can also go ahead and add new Photoshop filters that were just announced at Max London. If you wanted, you can select any of these, but I actually just want a grayscale filter and maybe like a darken filter, but not that intense. So maybe I want to do like, actually, let's just do the darken and not grayscale because I do want it to have like those retro colors, you know? Okay, and then maybe I want to rotate that just ever so slightly. So let's do that here. Yeah, and then let's send this to back as well. Actually, no, let's leave that here. I want to send this to back. So let's select this group. Let's zoom in a little. I want to select this to group. And then select the Zine group and then zoom out again. Let's rotate that. Yeah, maybe we want to keep that here and this here. All right, I do want to size this down. So let's make it to 60 and then this to 60 as well. Now, reminder that this doesn't need to be perfect because it's your own zine and you can do whatever you want in it. So yeah, don't worry about the details just yet. This is just a layout, the first thing that you're creating. I'm just going with the flow and I really like using my brand assets. I'm just gonna go back to my library and get some. I know there's a pixelated smiley somewhere. Yeah, here it is. And this is one of the artworks that I typically use, which is like a pixelated smiley with like one of these little stars. I'm gonna put that right over here as well. And here you have it. Let's go back to our spreads and see that the first page that we designed in the first spread was page one. That means it's the cover. Now let's design the back cover as well. And how many minutes did that take us? I think that took us literally like 10 minutes. So once you have the design down, it literally doesn't take that long to create something like this. So the next thing that I want to do, very important, call to action. So we're going to create a call to action and say, listen to the podcast. So I'm going to do that here and say, listen to the podcast, and then maybe size that up and rotate that. We love rotating things here. And we also love a pixel smiley. So I'm going to go back to my design assets and bring that pixel smiley. The way that I set this up was actually in Adobe Illustrator. So I created some of these assets in Illustrator and Photoshop, and then I wanted to bring those into a library, which I did here, and that's why this is easily accessible in Adobe Express. I do want to see if I have somewhere I can add this. So maybe I can add a mic icon here, added some textures and effects to this as well. So it looks kind of pixelated, but still has that, like that element of fun in here. So I have that here. I maybe want to do something like this. Yeah, I think that looks cute. And then I do want to add some elements of like whimsy here as well, if that's what you call it. I don't know. So I want to add this element here, maybe something like so. So there's like a color and then send it to back. Now, I did want this part to be black, but this part to be white. So what I'm going to do is take this thing, this shape that we actually use as a demarcation, and put it here, and then change that color to white so that I can actually put the background color of the spread to be black. So I'm going to go ahead here and select the not quite black color, and then maybe use this shape as like a gray or something, and then use that, maybe it's like too gray, and use that as like a shape to bring out the contrast for the text. So yeah, that looks cool, and this way we don't lose the demarcation for the pages because that's where it's going to be folded or stitched, and we can also keep the details of the podcast. I do want to copy this shape here and write the URL of the podcast, which is just podcast.ablehead.com. Do want to keep it here, and then I'm going to size this down to like 48 or maybe even smaller. I'm going to go 36 and then just type in my URL, which obviously this can change depending on what your call to action is. It didn't quite fit, so maybe I'll size that down a little more. doesn't harm me right now. It's the back page, it's not the same page, so it's fine. I'm gonna tell myself that. But I would recommend just using two sizes and two fonts just to create that consistency. Okay, and then one last thing that I actually want to do is create a QR code for my podcast. So I'm going to a new Express homepage, and I'm going to click on explore quick actions. Right over here is this generate QR code button, and I'm going to go to my podcast website and copy the URL link, and then I'm going to paste the URL right over here. Now, there are various options in this dialog box. You can choose a color. So, if you wanted like a specific color, you could go ahead and choose that here. You can change the style of dots that you see and even the marker border. I do quite like the generic default options. And if you wanted a file format, which is SVG, only if you wanted to upload it to your website or elsewhere or use that as shapes in Adobe Illustrator or anywhere else, you could do so as well. For all our intents and purposes, I think a PNG would work. So I'm going to download that and then go back to my file and drag and drop that QR code from my file explorer or finder in this case. And yeah, I literally, quite literally, was like yesterday day old when I today years old or yesterday years old. Is that what they say? When I found out that QR codes can still be used if they have rotation on it. I just somehow thought that it wouldn't work, but it still worked. So that was cool. So yeah, there we have it. We have our front and back cover done within the 20 minutes that we've been here. And I actually love this because this is so cool. We've already done the front and back, and I'm gonna name this as spread one. So that's cool. Let's go back to our saddle stitch reference and see what we're designing next. We're actually designing page 2, 3, 14, 15. But what I want to lay emphasis on is this last spread, because you can create something here which covers the whole page because it's going to be the center of your booklet. So let's start with that, which is essentially page 8 or spread 8 in this case. So I'm going to rename that to spread 8. And then I actually wanted to add a quote here. So I'm going to reference my notes and see what we're doing. So I'm going to go to your stuff and see what's there in my library assets that we can use. I actually went ahead and created some of these assets that I wanted to use. So I'm just going to add that elsewhere because it was going to take so long to add something like that. But let's start with rounded rectangle shape that I have here. I think that's a rounded rectangle if I'm not wrong. Yeah, there we go. That's the rounded rectangle. If you didn't have something in your library, you can always go to the Elements tab and create something from here. And if you wanted, you can even color pick from your own library. So if I wanted assets that were just designed in Adobe Express, you could do so right over here. I did want more corner roundness, so you can achieve that right over here. This was very, very specific, so I think I'm going to stick with that. But if you wanted, you can actually, let's just use this one and not the linked asset. Let's create with this. So I'm gonna center align that just with these little margins. And speaking of margins and alignment options, you can actually turn on margins and bleed within your Adobe Express file. So if you're creating something page to page here like so, this is where it's really, really helpful, where you're creating something like this and there's bleed and you just wanted to see how far your text should go or what is our safe zone, right? Stuff like that. I'm gonna go ahead and add some text here. So I'm gonna say the real secret to personal, sorry if I can type, personal branding. And then I did want to choose a different paragraph style for this. So I'm going to go to your stuff. I actually haven't done this before, but I do have a paragraph style selected. I'm not sure if this is gonna, oh, it's not gonna, but I can select a font here. So I can go ahead and say I want instrument serif. And that's really cool. It's like a neat little serif and very tall. And I think that's what I really love about it. And then maybe I can make this bigger, make the box bigger. And then change the color into my brand colors. I'm gonna go to swatches and use this really neat neon green. And then I want to replicate this and get some text. So it says show up as yourself. I love that this is like this podcast has been so cool, learning so much from all of my colleagues and people I actually admire, and they are all designers, small business owners, love creating, and I just love learning from like fellow designers and fellow creative directors. We had Alex Lazarus on the podcast. You might have seen him on Adobe Live too. And I just love just love learning from everyone who's like such an expert in their fields. All right, let's actually go ahead, select the white, and then maybe, just maybe, should I center line it? Are you gonna be mad if I center line it? Um, let's center line it. Some people just really like it's their pet peeve. I actually asked this as a question in one of the episodes, and one of my guests, I think it was Liz Mosley, and she's like, I really do not like when people center line stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I I get it. I understand. So Liz, if you're watching, I'm sorry. But let's center line that. And then maybe I want to decrease that size to like 36. Maybe let's do that. Yeah, this looks good. And then if you're unable to find the center alignment, you can actually go ahead and find the position from here. And then this looks kind of bland. I am going to remove this shape because it's going to be a whole spread in itself. I am going to go to your stuff here and then maybe find a shape that I can add some like whimsy element as well. So let's go back to our. Okay, this is cool. Maybe I do not want to add a smiley everywhere, so maybe this asterisk is gonna be a good one. I do want to increase the corner roundness just like a little here, and then maybe I want to add a different element here as well. So let's scroll through our elements, and then maybe this little highlight kind of thing. Yeah, that actually looks cool. I do like that. I admire that. And then maybe let's go to our second page and see how you can create something here. So let's go back. Let's go back to the basics. We covered a lot actually. Let's go back to our face camera. So we essentially started with what a saddle stitch booklet is and how you want your total number of pages to be divisible by 4. There is a link in the description, so you can go back and reference to that. It is from conlenspress.com. So you can go ahead, reference that, make your pages, and it's a little bit of maths um a little bit, but it's so worth it at the end. We ended up looking at this layout here, which is essentially important when you're learning how to set up your pages, when you're creating something like this in a tool that doesn't have a button to do so. So you have page 1 and 16 in the first spread, and a total of 8 spreads, 16 pages. And then we also created page 8 and 9, which was just one spread, center of the booklet. And then now we did a quick recap, and now I want to go back to create page 15. I actually created that earlier, so I actually just want to drag it out here, which is this little guy. Not little, it was just a bunch of text and shapes. So I want to do that quite easily. And I hope it's not pixelated and it kind of becomes a better resolution as we go through, because I don't want that to be pixelated at all. If it's pixelated, I'll go back and add a vector version of it in here. And then the next thing that I actually want to do is add an image on this side. So yeah, let's see if we have that. Yeah, we have this image right over here. So I'm gonna add the image here. I did actually go ahead and cut up the image in two different styles. So it just says time. So let's bring that other image in here as well. Where are you? Is this it? Yeah. This is it. So this was the whole image, right? You see it? Okay. Got it like 2 times. This is the whole image. I'm going to scale that up. Now, I wanted this to be a part of the same spread. So let's work out how this is going to look once we have set it up. So I want it to be 2 and 3. So that it's like when you open the booklet, it's like next to each other. So the left part of the image will go on spread 2. So I'm going to rename that to spread 2. And the right side of this is going to be spread 3, right? So this is spread 2, this is spread 3. I'm going to command X that from here and then bring that here. So that's page 2 and 3. This is still pixelated. I actually dislike that. So I'm going to find a way um, to see if that actually works itself out. I hope it does. hope it loads meanwhile when we're doing things, because I really don't want that to be pixelated. All right, so we have that here. And the next thing that I actually want to do is think about how I'm going to set up all the other pages. So I did make page 15 because I did create this earlier, but I still don't know what's going to be on page 14. Let's actually go ahead and add the image that we had earlier just so I can show you some of the features as well. So this was one of the images that I downloaded. I'm going to reuse this here, maybe like cut it down like a little and then send to back. And now I can delete this because the right hand side already has stuff on it. So I can go ahead, go to my effects panel and maybe use grayscale in this case just because it's like fun to see. And then maybe I can add like a design element from my library. So maybe I want to add this. Now be like, this is part of the design language, but you can easily overuse stuff. So make sure you're not overusing that. I'm using this for demo purposes, so I can have the liberty to doing this any number of times I want. But I want to make sure that you're not reusing and overusing your design elements. So yeah, that's how you create spread one. We have spread two, we have spread three. I haven't done anything on spread four yet, but how I would do something like that would be essentially maybe have images of all guests. So I have these images. Let's start with our first guest, Colby. So I wanted to add images and names of all of my guests. So I could just do that from here. So if I had Colby right over here, I have a name and then I also have a name tag somewhere here. So I want to do this really quickly where I could just add names of all my guests in this. And then maybe over here, I want to add some quotes. So obviously going back to my quotations, um, let's see, did that add it? I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure if it added stuff there. Yeah, there we go. And then maybe I wanted to add it here and then maybe change the color to not quite black. So I'm gonna go, there we go. And then you could add a quotation here, right? So I think it's super cool and such a good start. We have the first spread, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and the eighth spread, which is page 8 and 9. So let's go ahead and you know what? Do something fun. I want you to take a look at the actual design. So let's switch to my top down camera. This was actually the keyboard I was using. I was using some of these macros that I set up here to copy paste and do some shortcuts for me. This is by work ladder. It's called Nomad E. I do want to jump into showing you how my file actually looks. So let's move our stuff onto the side here and then show you how everything looks. So this is essentially the middle, like the spread 8 that we created, which is the real secret to personal branding. And then if I go back here, this is our spread 1, page 1 and page 16, which is super cool. This is our front page, this is our back cover, and I did actually print on both sides so it could be a zine. So this is spread 1 and this is spread 2 and this is what we created. Then this is spread 3 and this is spread 4. This was super cool. I created something like this. I'm going to bring this up here so you can see. And we have spread 5, which has a quotation by Colby and all of my guests for this podcast. We have so many guests. We actually have Flynn here and Mike from Work Louder as well, which is really cool. And then we have some text and some QR codes about why people said what they said and where you can listen to the podcast again. And then some other imagery here. And then the last spread, which we already saw. So page 8. So how you can do this is essentially take something like this, which is actually a bone folder. So you can go ahead and maybe I want to do this with this page. So you can go ahead and fold this here. If you wanted ASMR sounds, they're right over here, supplying ASMR sounds on Adobe Live. And you can go ahead and fold this with the bone folder. So no cutting involved, and this is super cool. And now we have this. Obviously, didn't do a good job, did a shoddy job there. But this is how the center of the page is gonna look when you fold it. And it's like such a cool way to design something like so. And then let's actually see how everything is gonna look like once you fold it. So I'm gonna fold all the other sides as well. This time I'm gonna try and do a good job at it. So let's do that really, really quickly. Yeah, I think this is good. Did I do a good job? Yeah, this is better than the first one. For sure. That is true. So you can actually fold this using this bone folder. This has been like the best tool that I've used. I actually want to turn off my portrait mode because I feel like it's taking away from the text. Yeah, there we go. And then I do want to use this here, and then I'm going to use these other two pages as well. So I'm going to go ahead, and I know I did not showcase any of the exporting options. So once we're done folding, I'm going to showcase this one last thing in the tool. Oh my God, I really messed that up. Um, this is why you create multiple copies. So I have something else, which is like a secondary copy. This is just my test one. So we're good. But if you did mess it up, make sure to print multiple copies. I really totally messed that up here so bad. But yeah, make sure to have multiple copies. So if you're doing this like I am, yeah, you have something to fall back on. I do want to go back here as well. And then I'm gonna make sure that I actually do a good job for this first one at least. Okay, yeah, I can breathe now. Yeah, and then I have this, and then I can just lay these out between the pages. And obviously, this is bad because it's not perfect, but I guess a mini DIY zine is not supposed to be perfect, right? Yeah, that's the silver lining. But this is our zine, so we have between the lines, and I put it to the side. And then some of the lessons learned. Then we have our all our guests here. Best things aren't planned. And then we have a quotation here. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should talk about how I pitched myself to the guests and how it came about. And then this is our center page. So this is our middle page, right? Which is what we created in spread 8. We have Fergie, Colby, who's our guest, and then the image, and then some of the fun text designs that we created. And then our last page, which is our call to action, which is go to podcast.ablehead.com and listen to the podcast. I did actually cheat a little and go ahead and asked my staple queen at my print shop to like staple it and make a booklet out of it. So she, or actually they them, actually printed this and stapled it and made the booklet for me. So if you can look closely, I don't know if it's visible. Yeah, now it is. There's actually like a staple here. Here. And so I did not actually have to go ahead and do anything. I'm gonna go ahead and maybe press it down. There we go. And so this is my test run, of course, but this is my final book. So if I wanted, I would just use this guy, and it looks so seamless and like so perfect. So yeah, I actually love this. I am actually in awe of how good this turned out. So if you wanted to create something of your own, I'm gonna put this to the side and bring my keyboard back in just because I do want to talk about how you want to export stuff from Adobe Express. So let's go back here to my screen over here, and let's talk about how you can download this. But I think this turned out really cool. And when I click on the download button, right, you have your margins and everything turned on. So once you have your zine created, you can click on the download button here, click on all pages, and then select PDF print. Now there's an option to add crop marks and show bleed. I would recommend printing it and downloading it just as for the first run, and maybe just printing a grayscale version and seeing how that looks. I actually want to download it and show you how both of these look so you can compare and see what values you wanted. For me, I'm going to click ahead and download both of these options to show you how that looks and say print. And then meanwhile, when that's doing its thing, I'm going to open up the first one. So this one doesn't have any crop marks or bleed, right? The second one, although, will have crop marks and bleed. It's almost there. So I'm going to go ahead and open the second one here as well. This is my second one. This does have the crop marks and bleed, and I really prefer this one because you can actually cut and make sure all the lines are straight and not do a messy job like I did with the bone folding. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today and tuning in to another episode of Adobe Live. If you are watching this from the comfort of your home and if you have any questions for me, make sure to leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much again for tuning. My name is Anika and I'm signing out, and I will see you in another episode. If you end up creating any zines using this method and any of the demonstrations that I did, make sure to send it to me on Instagram, on my messages, or tag Adobe Live and Anika Aggarwal, ANIKAAGG, on Instagram. We would love to see what you create using Adobe Express and your creativity. Thank you so much, and we will see you another time.